Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching with Rabbi Chaim Pelcovits.
During the summer, we try to have some different voices in this space and also just on Shabbat in general. Fridays are a little bit different. We do services in people's homes. We do services with instruments on the field. We really take advantage of the fact that the summer is a different time and brings in different people and takes away some people because they go to camp or they go on vacation or whatever. And so for Seudat Shlishit, we also try to bring in both members of our community and members from outside the community who are scholars in very many different fields, but who can speak to the Torah in a scholarly way. Rabbi Ephraim Pelcovits was a dean at Ziegler when I was a student, which is how I got to know him originally. And as I was just telling his dad, I then get to spend a lot of time with him here at Pressman and Beth. And he is not only one of my favorite people, but one of my favorite teachers. So last year, I don't know if you even remember this, last year, when Rabbi Pelcovits taught, this room was under renovation or something, and so we were actually in the ballroom across the way, and it's one of the only teachings I remember from last summer, and that's not to say that anybody else was not good. It just... this does go on the podcast, yeah. And Michael Becker is the only one who listens to the podcast, so he doesn't have to. No, but the... Rabbi Pelcovits is a very dynamic teacher and someone who, when I am doing my own teaching, I think of very often. So it's really a pleasure to kick off this summer series with Rabbi Pelcovits, and the floor is yours. Bechavod.
Let me see if there's a safe spot for my tea. There is. Oh, she left the room, but I'm going to thank her, and you'll tell Rabbi Schatz I thanked her, which is, I'm basically, she'll hear it on the podcast. Exactly, Michael. I said this, I think, last summer, which is, it is above and beyond that you come to these minchas when you've brought in guest teachers. And we're all, I'm sure, at least I am, but I'm sure everyone else is glad to pitch in and teach here because we love Temple Beth, and we are all very, very dear friends of yours and very fond of you, Rabbi Schatz. But I say to myself, Rabbi Schatz should take this summer Shabbos afternoons where she's brought in guest teachers off and put her feet up and sit in the lovely LA summer sun, and that she comes out to learn with all of us, or maybe she only does it for me, I don't know, is really a lovely thing. So thank you for doing that. I guess I'm the kickoff to the summer series, and you might say I grabbed this week as soon as you sent out that email, but I didn't do it because I wanted the great dignity of getting the first session. I did it because I knew my parents. They had told us they'd be in LA, so my dad is here with us. He had Shlishi, and so thank you for being with us, Abba. It's really a treat to teach with you in the room. Yeah, Abba Sheli. And then once I picked the date, I kind of noted it in my calendar as Shlach, but then I realized, oh, right, it's Mincha, so I'll be reading Korach, which is one of my... Yeah, I know you're not supposed to have favorite kids. You're probably not supposed to have favorite Torah readings, but you do, right? Don't tell my kids I said, right? So Korach really is one of my favorite Torah readings. I think maybe, first of all, because... it was one of the parshiot that my teacher at Brandeis... Mark Bretler focused on in his Bible class, our teacher of Torah. One of the teachers of Chumash and Tanakh I've learned most from in the world. There are probably 2 or 3 people I'd put on that list. And Bretler spent a lot of time with Korach, so it's dear to me from that reason, and also because of kind of the questions that the Torah reading, I don't remember the original title I gave for this class, but questions of what it means to dissent and what it means to organize against and what it means to protest authority are really interesting questions. And those questions of dissent, of organizing against those in power, of speech, feel loaded, feel particularly resonant, feel even more important than ever to be thinking about today. So I come oh, great, I have that good, like very accurate halachic time clock that I can see. So over the next 25, 30 minutes, I'm going to really, I come here like giving us some text to think about. And if we leave just having thought about those questions a little bit more, both from the standpoint of being American citizens and from the standpoint of being Jews and thinking about our traditions lens on that, Dayenu, that'll be enough. I'm going to start handing out worksheets. Now that I'm back at the mic for the 4 people on Zoom and the podcast, I can start talking again. We're going to take a look at the first few psukim. I think I'm probably not supposed to have you read, but I'll have folks ask questions. Maybe I'm allowed to have you read. I don't remember what the rule is when we're mic'd and people are joining on Zoom. But we saw these psukim in our beautiful reading of the first aliyah of next week's Torah portion. So these are just the first few psukim of Parashat Korach. The story obviously goes on from here for a bunch more psukim, but I think you get the like key moment of organizing and protesting the current power structure in these few psukim. I'll start us off, what the heck, and read them through just in the English so everyone has them, pointing out just a few Hebrew words. I underlined, I think, the key English words, which is, now Korach, son of Yitzhar, son of Kahat, son of Levi, betook himself. The Hebrew is vayikach. To vayikach yourself is very strange. So translations struggle for the best way to say that. But Korach took himself, along with Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliav, and On, son of Peleth, descendants of Reuben. And then this next verb of kind of organizing, to rise up, vayakumu, like lakum in modern Hebrew, against Moshe, together with certain other Israelites, 250 of them, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They combined against Moshe and Aaron and said to them, this is kind of their claim against the current leadership structure, Rav lachem ki chol ha'ida kulam kedoshim uvetocham Adonai umadua titnasu al kahal Adonai. You have gone too far, Rav lachem, for all the community are holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourself above God's congregation? When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. So I could have stopped just with verses 3, but we have this organizing of, well, who's kind of standing up? Korach. Anyone else? Who? His children. Some other people from the tribe of Levi, and also people from Reuven, so children of the firstborn of Jacob's descendants and fellow Levites, and also other senior people, right? And they're combining against Moshe. And what's the crux of their claim? What's those sentences I bolded? How might you characterize them?
I was going to read them. I don't know how to characterize them.
I use it. Give a shot. Why not? What is that claim? I don't know. Anyone want to take a stab at it?
We're all as good as you are.
Great, perfect, wonderful, beautiful. We're all as good as you are. I think that's like a perfect summary. Like, why do you get to be the boss? We're all chosen people. We're all part of this Am HaNivchar. We're all part of Bnei Yisrael. Why are you the one who's more special than all of us that you should be leading us on this journey? Any immediate responses to these opening psukim, or just like I'm going to let one person throw in a question, throw in a concern, throw in a observation here before we dive into kind of the first text I wanted to look at in juxtaposition to it. Please. Harris, right? AJ, yes.
Oh, okay. It seems like the fight between primogeniture and ultimogeniture is stated in an indirect way here, but pretty much what's happening here. Moses is the younger brother, and he's not only younger brother, but he's the younger brother and descendant of a younger line than these other guys.
So
he may not be all of Israel, and they may purport that all the people are holy, but the guys who are complaining are more favored by primogeniture.
Okay, just to summarize for those on the Zoom, AJ's noting that first of all, Moshe is a son of Levi, so not the firstborn of Jacob's, and yet he's in charge. Remember, he's not the oldest brother, so there's already why are you in charge based on where you fall in the birth order? Shouldn't birth order determine leadership? Wait a minute, Reuven now is emerging, or the older siblings of Levi's descendants. There's something about why is the leadership structure the way it is, and is that really the crux of what these people's claim is? AJ's noting, based on this other source of their claim, which is we're all holy. So the people who already have authority based on their structure in the kind of descendants of Yaakov are saying maybe we should be in power, but they're basing that on, aren't we all holy and deserving of being in power? So it's a very strange claim. It's not really completely clear. It's a strange piece. What happens next? We're not going to read it through, but just if someone can remember the rest of the Korach story, please.
Well, it's very interesting to me that Moshe does not attempt to answer or respond himself. He puts it on God. He says, bring your fire pans, we're going to let God tell us the right way forward. Who should go forward?
Perfect. So Moshe, they bring this claim, they say, why are you the boss? And Moshe doesn't answer and say, I'm the boss because I'm the smartest. He doesn't say, I'm the boss because I was the baby who was raised in Pharaoh's household, and therefore I really know how to run things. I'm the only one here in this entire community of ragtag slaves who've ever sat in a king's household and seen what leadership looks like. Instead, he says, you know what, let's let God figure this out. So he creates this test where they bring these fire pans, and there's this sacrifice, and God's going to determine who should be the leader. And then God kind of both burns up some of the people and opens this pit in the earth where others are eaten up. God decides that that really this threat to Moshe's leadership was not right, and Moshe not only should hold on, but that the people who said you shouldn't be leader were really, really bad. So bad that they deserve to be burned up, or they deserve to be swallowed by the earth. Bobby had a question. I'm going to break my own rule and let him ask one more.
There are a few things. One, this is a difficult conversation that's emerging, and clearly Korach did not enter it with a soft start, right? He could have been hey Moshe, can we talk? Can we? Instead, he comes out with this accusation with a hot head, and Moshe wisely, in a way, did not escalate the tension, right? And it's almost like when you see athletes talking before a big game, you're talking smack, and then there's one guy who's okay, let's just settle this on the field, guys. Let's put this aside, and the talk doesn't really matter. Whoever wins on the field is really what counts. And I think that's what Moshe's trying to do. He's let's let God decide this, because I'm Brukta and Ahmed, who's the true judge here, right?
So I love your, especially, not to say I don't love all, but I love your first point, Bobby, which is to note how the claim is brought. Because there's no record of a quiet approach to Moshe, of having one person say, we're a little concerned. We're uncomfortable with the way things are going. There's this big mass emergence in a public space of lots of other powerful people. You're noting a piece of how there's a lot. We're going to touch on one scholar in particular's interpretation of what went wrong in this moment, but I think this is an important one. It's the style of how they emerged. I think I'm just going to quickly drop in, do something very dangerous, which I'm doing twice on this text sheet, which is I'm a rabbi, not a lawyer, bringing legal texts from the American canon to a synagogue. Typically, I don't know, a third of any synagogue service is filled with lawyers. So this is really stupid of me, but I'm doing it anyway. What the heck? Which is, I noted it at the beginning, but I'll name it again, which is Mordechai Kaplan in his Judaism as a Civilization beats this point repeatedly, and it's I don't know, canonical to my thinking of what it means to be a Jew in America. He notes just how important the American-Jewish relationship with our country is based on the fact that we live in a democracy. and that's part of why he thinks we've thrived in the way. He already is noting that in the pre-war era. But we are, the American Jewish community is this unique experience of being Jews in a country that's a democracy. Part of those democratic traditions are founded very much in our Constitution, and in particular in the Bill of Rights. And whenever I think of Korach, I'm always like, wait a minute, like, is he doing anything wrong? Right? We hold, like, as American Jews, these ideals of, well, the First Amendment, which maybe often in synagogues we think of the first half of the First Amendment, which is the right not to have a state religion, the people I think call the Establishment Clause. I shouldn't even use anything bordering on technical language because somebody's going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. But the second half of the First Amendment is really the important part, which is the promise that Congress, the most important branch of the federal government, will not abridge the people's right to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So we as American Jews read the Korach story, and we say to ourselves, wait a minute, like we hold dear, we cherish this right to assemble and to protest our leadership when we don't like it. What has Korach done wrong? I think Bobby started to name it in his question, namely to say, wait a minute, maybe there was something stylistically he did wrong. I'm going to turn. The classical Jewish commentators have a lot to say on this. Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, is my favorite on this, so therefore he gets to be on the sheet. It's a real. Sometimes Ramban has these like super absurdly long comments, and often what he does in those is he goes through the other people and he tells you why they're wrong. He goes through Rashi, who kind of names, is it jealousy that its core? What these rebels or protesters are bringing forward, and therefore that's at core what's wrong with their rebellion. Ibn Ezra talks about, this really kind of, again, similar to Bobby, maybe it wasn't Bobby's, and someone planted this in my head so far in the room, namely, God put Moshe in power. How can you question God's power by questioning Moshe? Ramban doesn't like any of those, and I think he's a really astute literary reader of this text. Rabbi Schatz, can I have someone else read the Ramban, or will it mess with the...
You just have to use the microphone.
That's annoying. I'm just going to do it. Is that okay with everyone? You're not going to get bored of me talking. I'll repeat back whatever anyone says. I'm just going to read this Ramban. It's a little confusing from the top, but I think by the end it'll make sense. So it's source 3 on the sheet, the back of page 1. Ramban here, I'm starting in the middle of a very long Ramban. 13th century Spanish commentator who says, thus they loved Moshe as they loved themselves, and they obeyed him. This is talking about all of Bnei Israel. So that had anybody rebelled against Moshe at that time, meaning earlier, some of the other commentators think this took place a while ago. Ramban says they're wrong. Had they rebelled against Moshe at that time, the people would have stoned Korach. Therefore, Korach endured the greatness of Aaron when he was appointed high priest, and the firstborns accepted without protest the high status of the Levites and all the other acts of Moshe. But when they came to the wilderness of Paran, that's the setting of this week's parasha, and it was decreed that the whole people would be consumed in the wilderness, and there they shall die, then the mood of the whole people became embittered, and they said in their hearts that mishaps occur to them through Moshe's words. Therefore Korach found it an opportune occasion to contest Moshe's deeds, thinking that the people would readily listen to him. What happened in this week's Torah portion? Who went this morning to shul and can tell us very, 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 very briefly the episode at the core of Parshat Shlach? Anyone remember? Paid attention? Bobby, you were fast. You caught my eye quickly. Yeah.
Spies, Joshua and Caleb were the ones that saw the light.
So spies, Joshua and Caleb don't come back with a bad report. Everyone else has a bad report. And then what happens?
And we're stuck for another 40 years, 10 years old.
God is furious. God wants to lead us out of this wilderness into Eretz Canaan and give us our own country. And we don't listen to Moshe. We think these spies have told us that land is not a good place to go. We won't be able to defeat the people who live there then. And God is furious. And essentially the deal that Moshe brokers with God is these people actually who were slaves in Egypt, they're not really going to be able to lead our way into that land. Those people are, I think it's such an astute moment, frankly, in the Torah. It's like really hard to break that mentality of having spent a lifetime. You can never really emotionally become free. And God and Moshe realized that generation actually won't be able to be the generation that enter the land. They're all going to need to die in the wilderness, and it's their children who will take the land. So what is Ramban noting here based on that? Based on the exact setting. He's saying, let's be good literary readers of the Torah. That's a really important lens he's applying. He's not doing anything all that frum here. He's saying, let's be good literary readers of the text. There's a setting to this text. What's happened just a moment ago is Moshe, the person who everyone loved, who everyone would have taken a bullet for, has now said, you all aren't going to get to enter the land of Canaan. You're all going to die here. Moshe's leadership is what at this point? He's a lame duck. It's really fragile. Like his leadership is at the most fragile point it's ever been since he's taken command in Egypt, maybe since he was like, they're afraid to talk to the Pharaoh that first time when he's like, Aaron, you got to talk for me. This is like, in all this time, Moshe is at his weakest. And so for Ramban, that's what makes Korach a bad faith protester. This is not about the quality of his claim, Ramban would say. This is not, frankly, about what Bobby noted about the fact that he didn't do it quietly. He looked to foment rebellion at the moment when this leader who did everything for his people was at his absolute most vulnerable, and he tried to exploit weakness in a community. Any immediate thoughts or reflections on Ramban? Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep talking because I had an immediate gut feeling about this Ramban. Your name? Rekha? Yeah. So Rekha's noting sometimes leaders, when they're weakened, actually do need to step aside. They shouldn't be holding on to the reins of power. It's too dangerous. This is a dangerous moment, maybe. Maybe Moshe should have ceded leadership at this time. Maybe. God doesn't think so. But maybe. Any other observations? I couldn't help but think about our own democracy at a particular... What does it mean to exploit the weaknesses of a fragile democracy? I'm not trying to claim any particular thing about America or about we all watched during the 9 months between this current Israeli government coming to power on October 7th, like what it meant to have a huge mass of people of our people in Israel going into the streets. What does it mean at a very weak moment to have mass protest? What does it mean to see leadership kind of at its most threatened? Having people, Ramban is uncomfortable with something about this protest against the leadership. I just wanted to juxtapose. Please, I'm gonna give Michael, because I'm sure he's gonna give me a hard time about this, which is good. A fellow Washingtonian thinking about American democracy, but I give you the First Amendment, which we hold as treasured as American Jews. I give you Ramban, who's like, there's something uncomfortable here. We have Bobby's comment about maybe it's the pathway to protest, but Michael doesn't like it all.
I didn't like it. I'm telling you. I'm confused by Ramban's discomfort as to whether it's the timing or the nature, because the timing makes sense, right? Like, one doesn't... in life, timing matters, right? So if one believes in one's argument and you think you're doing something for the good, you do it when you think it has a chance to succeed. But if Ramban is saying, well, this has always been all about Korach and only for Korach, and Korach is just waiting for the moment where he can fulfill his own ambitions, and it's not for the good of the nation, That's a separate conversation.
Michael is thinking like a good political thinker. He's raised in the cradle of American democracy, but really raised in the cradle of political animals. And he's like, wait a minute, this is how you get things done. You might have a claim that's only so-so, but when the Speaker of the House is weak, or when the president's already down in the polls, that's when you push. But for Ramban, there's something about, wait a minute, this is really the treasured leader of the Jewish people. This is a really shoddy claim, and he is working to look to like fracture a weakened society at its weakest moment of the leader, and there's something that feels gross about this to Ramban. I'm just putting I really want us all. I don't have a take home that I need you to have from this text. I think your question is a good question. To name that, wait a minute, there are times where we have leaders that do need to be pushed out, and that we have to think about the moments that we need to push. I think your point is good too. I want, before we have to wind up in, I think, like 7-ish minutes, and I do want to leave a minute or two at the end, just to put two more texts in front of you. The first is maybe what I think of. I always think of my teacher, Rabbi Scheiheld, who I've heard say, this is a very famous Ramban. And then I've seen him cock his head and he's like, what's famous in my head? Like, to me it's famous. I don't know if it's famous, but for me it's famous. So to me, this is a famous text about Korach. I don't know if it's famous. But to me, this is the other, like, if you asked me to name where Chazal talk about, where the sages talk about Korach, to me this is the most famous. It's a Mishnah Avot, the one part of Mishnah that's not just talking about, like, you know, how do you build a sukkah, or how do you make an eruv, or how do you slaughter an animal in a kosher way. It's about the ethics of how you live your life. And it's traditional in some Ashkenazi communities to study Avot on Saturday afternoons all summer. So nice that we get a little Avot. It's the last chapter has all this kind of broad-based material, but in Avot 5:17 we have this very kind of terse observation, and it really stays terse and kind of a bit opaque because there's no Gemara on Avot. So we neither have a Palestinian Talmud nor a Babylonian Talmud to make sense of this. Rambam in his Perush HaMishnah says basically nothing about this. And the best contemporary Mishnah scholar, Hanoch Albeck, or of 2 generations ago, but 20th century, I call him contemporary, really has nothing to add on this. So really we have to make of this what we will. But the Mishnah Avot says, Kol machlokat shehi l'shem shamayim. Any dispute that is for the sake of heaven will in the end endure, but one that is not for the sake of heaven will not endure. Which is the controversy that is for the sake of heaven? Those are the controversies of Hillel and Shammai, the 2 most famous rabbis who argue about Jewish law. And which is a controversy that is not for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Korach and all his congregation. So the Mishnah in Avot, without a lot of commentary on what these things are, says when Hillel and Shammai disagreed about Jewish law, tried to determine how you decide when Rosh Chodesh will come, or any arcane, minutia of Jewish law. That's a controversy that will endure. Albeck says that means in the Messianic era we'll get the full answer to what. That's what he believes that means. And Korach, there's something unholy about this dispute. Again, leaving it very opaque. I'm going to close with my last text. We close with both a most famous Chazali person and then the most famous Jewish American thinker about these ideas, Louis Brandeis. I'm going to quote from his dissenting opinion at the end of a very famous case about freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, which was a case from the 1920s during the first Red Scare. So America in this time after the Russian Revolution was very afraid of anarchy, was very afraid of the spread of communism. There were bombings of American government officials. It wasn't out of nowhere, this fear. And wealthy California philanthropist Anita Whitney was arrested for helping to organize and fund the Communist Labor Party in California. And the case went before the court, and it was upheld. her arrest. But Brandeis wrote this opinion. The other person who signed on to it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, the kind of other famous American free speech person of that generation. But we'll quote the Yid. We'll quote the first Jew on the Supreme Court here in Shul. He writes, "Those who won," I love this, "those who won our independence by revolution were not cowards. They did not fear political change. They did not exalt order at the cost of liberty. To courageous, self-reliant men and women, with confidence in the power of free and fearless reasoning applied through the process of popular government, no danger flowing from speech can be deemed clear and present unless the incidence of the evil apprehended is so imminent that it may befall before there is opportunity for full discussion. If there be time to expose through discussion the falsehoods and fallacies to avert the evil by the process of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence." So we have both the comments of Pirkei Avot, which name something about this Korach revolution is unholy. It's not sofo lehitkayim. There's something about this assembly against Moshe at what Ramban sees as Moshe's most fragile moment as being unworthy, and God intervenes to say, yeah, that was unworthy. And then on the other hand, I think we have this beautiful statement which kind of refines that idea in the First Amendment to say the founders weren't afraid of speech. The best way to protect speech is not to light people on fire, but to persuade people with better speech. I left 3 questions on there, which is essentially asking how we decide these things, how we make sense of things, how we sort these things out. If I'm kind of opening the floor, I don't know, what do we have, 2-3 minutes, something like that. If there's 1 or 2 comments or questions or things particularly pressing, but I'm just going to reiterate what I really wanted people to take from this, which is just to be thinking about these questions, to be thinking about them through Torah, Ramban, Pirkei Avot, and through the sacred texts, because they're sacred to me, and I think they should be sacred to us as Americans, of the kind of the words of our great Supreme Court justices, the words of our Bill of Rights, because we're blessed to be in a democracy. So any closing questions and comments, we'll take them now, please.
Well, in light of Pirkei Avot, which, as you say, is pretty abstract or opaque as to what really is, for the sake of heaven, that should endure, we don't really know what was wrong with Korach's objections or suggestions, and we really only know that they were bad because God came down and advised them. But if we rewrite that story, and instead of God stepping in to act, there's a debate between Moses and Aaron on one side and Korach and his followers on the other, and people take a vote or something as to how they want to proceed. Boy, we really don't know what the outcome would be, and is that more pertinent example, relevant to today, than virtue schmeicing bad guys from heaven? We can't achieve that.
So your charge is to leave here and write the midrash of like an alternate future of the Korach story, where Moshe and Korach discuss this claim. I'll flesh that out for you. I'll point that out. But it's in brief, Moshe is at his weakest because he's just told Bnei Yisrael. They've sent out these spies. They've said we don't want to enter the land of Israel. That was this week's Torah portion. And then God says, you know what? These people aren't ready to enter the land. They all are going to need to die in the desert. And now Moshe has been the mouthpiece of God and saying, you all are going to die in the wilderness. Moshe, the person who brought water out of rocks, who brought the 10 Commandments down from heaven, has just told him, you all are going to die in this desert. None of you are going to enter the promised land. He is weak now. I'm sorry.
I have a little disagreement with what was said.
Please.
It's not a question of debate. When there's real debate or argument, it's because both sides want to figure out what's the right thing to do, what's the moral thing to do. That's what argument really meant, not telling the other side it's wrong, stupid, and be quiet. And I think that the basic difference is between wanting to find out what the right thing to do is, having a substantial question, and wanting to prove I'm right, or one side is right, and therefore should be more powerful. Korach just wants to be right. He doesn't seem to care what is right.
It's not a claim, just to repeat your point onto the mic, you're noting a very good point of this story, which is there isn't all that much weight to anything Korach says. He just says, you all have too much. I don't like the way he doesn't have any constructive criticism. He doesn't have any meaningful substantive criticism. He's just there to say, I don't like you as leaders. And there's something about that, like just attack on the people, looking to villainize the people in power, that feels like a kind of a senseless populist attack on the leader without any substance, that feels, what's the word of Pirkei Avot? It calls it a machloket shelo l'shem shamayim, that it's a machloket not for heaven's sake, which really will go nowhere. Sofo eno lehitkayem. It has no point to stand upon. Can we take one last?
Yeah, it just seems to me that the whole point of Korach is to have power, and the whole point of Moses is not to have power. He never wanted it in the first place.
It's a conflict between humility and someone who's hungry for power. That's Rashi's read, essentially, who we didn't put on the sheet. But Rashi sees it. He doesn't name as much as what you said, which I think is very good. Moshe as leader who is the very paradigm of humility, reticent to take the mantle of leadership, and on the other hand, this person who's nothing but, especially in the context of Ramban, who noted he's waiting for the moment to stick in his dagger. Korach just wants to lead and doesn't really have anything he wants to do with it. That's a nice foil. I think hopefully I've left you with some interesting texts to think about leadership, some texts to think about what it means to put Jewish texts against democratic texts, and hopefully I've left you with some material to think about at this rough time for democracy, but left us thinking about big things.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.